Well, it is really considered the Tea Party's first test in policymaking when they come to Washington, and it's setting up a high-stakes showdown right now between several high-powered Senate Republicans. Senior Senator Jim DeMint rounding up 6 members of the freshman GOP class, including Tea Party favorites Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, and pushing a vote to ban earmarks, or at least have a moratorium on earmarks. But reports suggest that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is working to defeat that plan for a variety of reasons that he says are substantial. Let's bring in our panel today. Mary Catherine Ham is with us. She's a senior writer at the Daily Caller, as well as a Fox News contributor. And Bernard Whitman is a former Clinton pollster. This is fascinating to me because this is sort of the front burner issue right now in terms of cutting spending. Mary Catherine, is this an important thing for the GOP to stand by, or should they get to the bigger stuff first?
Well, I think it's something that a lot of folks who got elected talked about on the trail, so it's important for them, which is why you've got a bunch of these incoming freshmen signed on already. To a lot of people, I think to voters, this feels like, hey, are you guys actually going to make a good faith effort to cut some spending? And if you're not willing to do the low-hanging fruit, which is the earmarks, then what are you going to do? I mean, McConnell can't come out and say because he wants the Jim Bunning Center for the Study of Awesome Bluegrass in Kentucky, that's a good reason not to do this. And that's sort of the argument that they're making right now.
Bernard?
There's no question, Martha, that cutting earmarks is politically popular, but it's largely a sideshow that allows the Republicans to sidestep the real tough questions on what spending they're actually going to cut. I mean, the reality is that cutting all earmarks out of the deficit will have almost no impact on reducing our overall spending. It's less than 0.5% of our $3.5 trillion deficit.
But you know what? I just want to show you guys this soundbite from President Obama because, I think it's about more than that. I think it's about, putting your money where your mouth is and doing sort of the right thing. And, it's been called the gateway drug, basically, for spending. And if people can sort of get themselves over this, they might be able to go bigger. But let's look at what President Obama had to say about earmarks. This is back on November 3rd.
I'm a strong believer that the earmarking process in Congress isn't what the American people really want to see when it comes to making tough decisions about how taxpayer dollars are spent. And I, in the rush to get things done, had to sign a bunch of bills that had earmarks in them, which was contrary to what I had talked about.
All right, let's look at a quote from James Inhofe of Oklahoma about this. He says, I'm a strong believer. He says, I know it's the dumbest thing for me to say is that I'm for earmarks. But it would cede authority to President Obama. But McCain and DeMint are not being honest about how they define them. So, I've been ranked as one of the most conservative members of the Senate, he says, and this is coming from a conservative. Mary Catherine, what is the argument from Inhofe and McConnell in terms of how they're saying it would limit their power if they were to do away with earmarks?
They're saying you're going to get all this spending anyway and somebody else will be allocating it. It just won't be Congress, which there's a discussion to be had about it. And as Bernard says, there's certainly a discussion to be had about what's the best way to cut spending. This is not the #1 problem, obviously, with spending. But what it is if you guys can't sign on to a politically popular, non-binding conference rule about earmark reform, then that's a problem for doing entitlements, which are not politically popular, and it's going to be hard to tackle that problem. So this is like, you need to prove that you can actually do the easy stuff before you move on to the other stuff.
Yeah, so you know what, but moving on to the other stuff is I think, really what the American people are most interested in. And Bernard, as you point out, until we start talking about defense and Medicare and Medicaid, and until we start talking about Social Security, we're not going to get anywhere in this project. But Bernard, it sounds like you're saying, Democrats would be willing to do that, because you said that you're criticizing them for starting with earmarks.
No, but we need to tackle the tough things first, not last. The truth is, the only way to I want to go back. Hold on. I want to go back and look at what the Republicans said during the campaign. The only way to balance the budget by 2020 and protect all the programs the Republicans said they would not cut, Medicare, defense, and extend the Bush-era tax cuts, is to eliminate the entire rest of the federal government. Now the Republicans are in control of the House. It's time they actually come down and say what programs are they going to cut, other than $16 billion, which is going to have no impact whatsoever in reining in spending. It makes no sense.
So you're saying they're just giving lip service. Mary Catherine, he's saying you're just giving lip service to this whole thing, and they're not serious about it.
I understand that, and I frankly worry about that. But when you're on a diet, you go after the Cheetos first, okay? Like that's the low-hanging fruit. You go after that, and if they can't do that, then they've got a problem moving forward. And this is an opportunity to do that and prove that they can.
All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, a lot of folks, these folks who got elected, if they don't get to the real stuff and get to the meat of the bone and get past the Cheetos, they're only going to be around for a couple of years. Is my bet.
Very true.
So we'll see. Mary Catherine Ham, Bernard Whitman. Thanks, you guys. Good to see you as always.